Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Quijano. It is good to be with you. Thanks for joining us for a special edition of Red and Blue, where we'll be focused on covering the California recall election. CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins me as co-anchor tonight. Ed, it is good to see you. It says in the prompter someone named Edward is going to be co-anchoring with me.
Elaine, it's great to see you. It's good to be off the White House North Line and out of the House, both of us in the office tonight for a big night. Glad to be here for something that's been more than a year and a half in the making. This is the final day of voting to decide whether Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom will keep his job or if he'll become the state's second ever governor to be recalled. The first came in 2003. You may remember that. When Democrat Gray Davis was removed from office, he was replaced by movie star Arnold Schwarzenegger, the last Republican to win statewide in California. The last Republican. That's how long it's been. Governor Newsom this afternoon seemed confident he'll not suffer a similar fate.
I'm feeling good as long as we get out that vote. I mean, the bottom line, I've said this, I'm embarrassed to say it again. You don't even need, you can probably get me without gray hair and some old tape saying this. Polls don't vote, people vote. And that's particularly true in an off-year, off-month election and a recall election.
Novel concept. Polls don't vote, people vote. Well, look, here's how this voting works. It's a two-question ballot. Number one, should Gavin Newsom be recalled from office? If a majority of voters say yes, he's out. Then the person who gets the most votes on question two becomes the next governor, even if they finish below 50%. With 45 candidates on the ballot, anything's possible.
Anything's possible. Well, Governor Newsom's campaign has been urging voters to reject the recall and leave that second question blank. That has created an environment for conservative talk radio host, Larry Elder, to emerge as the polling leader among the possible replacements. The Newsom campaign and its allies are directing most of their focus on Elder. They hope to frame the race as a straight-up choice between the Democratic governor and the Republican. And Newsom brought in the party's leader to campaign for him last night.
The decision you're about to make isn't just going to have a huge impact on California. It's going to reverberate around the nation and, quite frankly, not a joke, around the world. This year, the leading Republican running for governor is the closest thing to a Trump clone that I've ever seen.
Tamara, Keith, and Carla Marinucci join me now with more. Tamara is an NPR White House correspondent and a California native, and Carla is a senior writer for Politico's California Playbook. Welcome to you both. Carla, let me start with you. Help us understand how Democrats came to focus on Larry Elder rather than offer a Democratic option on the second question in case Newsom is recalled.
Well, Larry Elder was a convenient gift to Gavin Newsom, somebody who's been on talk radio for almost 30 years in California, a lot of conservative and controversial views. It allowed Newsom to basically cast this election as one with national stakes, one where, as Biden said, the eyes of the nation are on California because you either keep Gavin Newsom or you'll get Donald Trump. They are using Larry Elder as basically, as Biden said, a clone, someone who is going to chip away at women's reproductive rights, who would erode labor protections, who would undermine California's battle against climate change. So the Newsom people wanted no Democrat on that ballot because a Democrat in 2003, Cruz Bustamante, helped elect Arnold Schwarzenegger, in effect, by chipping away some of those votes. So they didn't want to take any chances, and they are urging Democrats to keep that second question blank.
You know, Tamara, the race isn't over, but the Sacramento Bee reports Larry Elder's already pushing baseless conspiracies about fraud and preparing to contest the results if the governor keeps his job. Sounds a lot like what former President Trump's failed efforts to overturn his 2020 defeat turned into. Is this, in essence, now at the national and statewide level, the new Republican election playbook?
I think that is a really big question. I think it's also a question whether this will work for Elder, and I guess what is the metric for something working. But if the polls are right, and obviously Governor Newsom said polls don't vote, but if the polls are remotely accurate, then there is going to be a long distance between Larry Elder becoming governor and not. And it's going to be pretty hard to make the claim that this was somehow rigged or stolen. Another question hanging over this is, with all of this talk coming from Larry Elder, the former president, others, that maybe this could somehow, the jig is in, this is rigged, all of that language that is very similar to what former President Trump talked about before his election in 2020, talked about before those Georgia special elections and runoffs. Could this depress Republican votes? Certainly, in mail-in voting, which is the predominant form of voting in California, Democrats, who vastly outnumber Republicans, overperformed, vastly outnumbered Republicans in those early votes in California. Now, same-day voting, we'll wait to see what happens there. But telling people that there's no way that this is fair seems like a really strange way, according to one Republican consultant in California I spoke to. It's like a voter depression tool.
Right, and that's something, Tamara, that we heard from officials in Georgia. Republicans were privately concerned in 2020, as we all know, about the fact that when you have these kinds of baseless claims being made, it could, in fact, get people to just not want to even bother coming out. Carla, let me ask you, California has long been home to emerging forms of conservatism. It's, of course, the homes of Presidents Nixon and Reagan, who helped chart the course of the modern Republican Party. What does the California GOP look like now?
This is really the reason, Elaine, why today's recall is not the same as 2003. There are 5 million more Democrats here. The Republican Party has been reduced to 24% registration here. It's almost a footnote at this point. So you had a more moderate Republican, former San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer, who was in the lead among the replacement candidates until Larry Elder stepped into the race. Now, Elder was just on radio a few minutes ago, asked if he would run again in 2022 against Gavin Newsom, said he is not leaving the stage. He believes himself to be a force in the Republican Party. Depending on what the results are today, and people are suggesting, all the experts are suggesting, this is going to be a double-digit win for Gavin Newsom, a landslide. It's only really a question of how big, perhaps. It's going to be interesting to see if Larry Elder continues to want a big place in the Republican Party and a big footprint. That could have a very big impact on their success or more decline as the next election goes forward.
Tamara, I want to go to you in a second, but Carla, just to pick up on part of that, I know you've written about this. Part of what went on here is that those pushing for this recall actually got extra time to collect signatures to make it happen, because every California governor, at least in the modern era, has had a threat of a recall. Most of them have been unsuccessful. This one was. Is it fair to say that if they hadn't gotten that extra time, we might not be here tonight?
Oh, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, they were out of gas. This recall movement was the sixth recall movement aiming at Gavin Newsom. They were pretty much out of gas in terms of collecting those signatures until the judge gave them 120 days extra to collect. That exactly coincides with Gavin Newsom's famous French Laundry dinner, in which he was seen maskless with a lot of lobbyists. That also fired up the recall proponents and their efforts to get the 2.1 million signatures they needed. So Gavin Newsom, self-inflicted wound, but that judge's extension was absolutely the thing that created the recall that we have today.
Yeah, you said three things there that no governor should probably ever do: eat maskless with lobbyists at a luxury restaurant, and here we are.
Exactly.
Tamara, you and Carla both covered the 2003 recall, and we've talked a little bit about this, but the similarities and differences you see between this race and the one 18 years ago.
So the big difference, well, there are many differences. First, Gavin Newsom is vastly more popular than former Governor Gray Davis. Gavin Newsom's popularity approval rating is above 50%. Gray Davis was well below 30% at the time of his recall. Other things, Arnold Schwarzenegger. There's a big difference between Arnold Schwarzenegger and Larry Elder. Schwarzenegger was a moderate. He had international stardom. He also had connections to Democratic politics by marriage. And he really was running as a moderate. It was also, and this isn't an important difference, but it was just a more fun campaign. I don't, that's not the right word for it, but there was whimsy.
We know what you mean.
Arnold Schwarzenegger was making Total Recall puns and other movie puns. And Gary Coleman was running, and he's not around anymore. But this recall has a darker edge to it. It has the pandemic and an anti-mask protest, an anti-vaccination movement, and claims, totally fraudulent claims of voter fraud, totally unfounded.
Well, Carla, you know, when we look at potential ripple effects in this contest, of course, the thing that people inside the Beltway are looking at is Senator Dianne Feinstein. So she's 88 years old. Tell us how she fits into all of this and what could that mean in Washington?
I mean, Senator Feinstein is one of the reasons, I think, where Gavin Newsom has gotten a big bump among Democratic voters going toward the end. I mean, Larry Elder promised to appoint a Republican to the U.S. Senate if Senator Feinstein retires. That fired up Democratic voters who were sitting on the sidelines and not even interested in this election. This is just one of the ways I think that Newsom has effectively seized on issues and kind of nationalized the race, talking about red states like Texas, which is basically stripped abortion rights, or Florida, where the schools kids don't wear masks. He has made this not a referendum on himself, but on other Republican governors. And so Feinstein's the fact that Larry Elder might try to flip the Senate and, as he said, create an earthquake in the U.S. Senate by doing so. That was just one way to get those Democratic voters out to vote, and Newsom should send him a thank you note on that front. Just one of the many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tamara, by the way, expert placement of the NPR nerd license plate behind you. On an issue outside the Golden State. Yes, on an issue outside the Golden State. We're also learning about the steps former president's top military advisor took after being worried that the then president would go rogue after the January 6th insurrection. This is coming in part from a new book. But what have we learned about this so far?
So this is coming from the new Bob Woodward book, and somehow, even if many books have been written, Bob Woodward finds a way to surprise and to deliver really juicy scoops about the president he's writing about at the time. No president really wants to read those books or to see those books come out. In this case, they are reporting that Milley went to the top leader, military leader, his counterpart in China, multiple times to say, don't worry, we're not going to attack you. If we do, I'll tell you in advance. As if to say, don't worry, right after January 6th, like, yes, democracy is messy, but it's going to hold. And it's a remarkable thing to have a top military leader appointed by President Trump, a top military leader going to a foreign counterpart to say, don't worry.
Yeah, it was a pretty incredible apparent development. And by the way, we should point out the Joint Chiefs of Staff chairman has managed to show up in a lot of these books. He's been doing some pretty aggressive PR for himself over the last several months. Tamara Keith, self-professed NPR nerd. Carla Marinucci, the author of the must-read California Playbook. I read it every morning. Thank you both. Happy Recall Day. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Okay, thanks.
See ya.